Hello, Gino here, and you are listening to Otherworld Connections. We live in a critical time where now, more than ever, angels and fairies, hidden forces, are bursting at the seams of the veil to work with us. They want to see us change in order to save the world and live in service to others. So join me on a journey to empowerment and enlightenment with an angelic angle and a fairy focus, looking into ways to improve our current situation, morality, archetypes, solutions for self-healing, and spiritual sciences in light of theosophy and other occult traditions. Hello. Welcome back to Otherworld Connections. I'm your host, Gino, and Otherworld Connections is now available on all podcast platforms, and you can check out my work for families and kids based on my experiences as an early childhood teacher on thesecretkindergarten.com, and you can download podcasts for kids on all podcast platforms too, and you can check out all that stuff on YouTube, etc. All right, today we're talking about trees. Tree talk as a gateway to self, understanding, healing, knowledge, that kind of thing. And about 8 years ago, I just remembered actually, before I started the show, about 8 years ago, I went away for a couple of nights to an island in Auckland, in the Auckland region, Great Barrier Island, with Julia, and we stayed in a place, and the lady insisted that we did this tree ritual. Okay, she wanted our money, right? And the whole thing for me was very like, whatever kind of thing. But I gave it a go, because I'm willing to discover new things and try new things. And we went to a park and we sat down, and I don't know if it is Shintoism, but it was some Japanese thing. And we sat down and did a little ritual, burnt incense, we picked up something from the park. I can't believe I forgot this, but this was 8 years ago. And we chose a tree. We said a prayer to the tree. We had a request for the tree, and we were given a little keepsake to take with us that was connected between us and the tree. It was like a little tiny teacup, and they were quite cute, and they were handmade, and we thought that was quite fun, so we drank out of them a little bit as well. And in hindsight, trees and spirituality have always been linked and been weirdly connected with my life ever since. I think we take trees for granted is what I'm saying. I did all that and I wasn't really conscious of my newfound space with, or my newfound relationship with trees, because they're just so natural of the earth, have been around for such a long time, right? Moving into the reading. So I have an oracle deck, Oracle of the Trees. And this is about the hollow tree. If you are in an unexpected, difficult situation, seek out a hollow tree. A situation may have you feeling isolated, in a survival state, and stressed out. You can bring back some emotional stability to overcome obstacles. Difficult dealings within the family and passionate relationships can take their toll. Reciprocate your feelings by taking a pause in front of the hollow of a tree. Excellent results can be achieved by stepping into quote-unquote discovery mode. Find your inner child and go exploring. Explore the hollow tree and figure out if anyone or anything lives inside. Think of the hollow as a temple and project your thoughts, prayers, and wishes through the space. Right. I live near a hollow tree on a walk. and it becomes a receptacle for rubbish. It's a receptacle, right? The hollow of a tree. Well, a hollow space kind of is like a cup, right? So it kind of is connected to cups in the tarot and pentacles as well. Okay, like a manifestation or material things, the physical realm. And pentacles, well, that's related to like heaps of just real world stuff, right? Families. There's a lot of family stuff in the pentacles suit of the tarot. So yeah, a hollow tree can help you, and you won't know until you know, you know. I speak to the hollow of the tree. I speak into it, and I get help. And guess what? It does work. You just got to be crazy enough to try these things. Perhaps desperate. Perhaps desperate enough. Right, I'm going to read what it says in this book for the Oracle of the Trees, because the information in here is quite well thought out and lengthy, so I'm just going to read it. The hollow tree. I have a sip of my coffee. In the foreground of the card, we see the knotty trunk of a massive tree, standing alone against the backdrop of a typical Italian town, surrounded by fields. At the base of the tree there is a large, dark opening from which flows a freshwater spring. On top of this opening, we can see another big cavity in the trunk of the tree from which an enormous owl, symbol of wisdom, is peeking out, hiding in the safety of his dark shelter. Alright, let's look at the symbology from this book. Far from being a negative symbol, as might be presumed at first glance, the hollow tree is traditionally associated with the idea of birth, rebirth, and abundance. Perhaps its appearance reminds us of a mother's womb. Along these same lines, the hollow tree also evokes a sense of mystery, a dark, unknown space that may be frightening, but might also be a doorway to another dimension, or perhaps simply a refuge. Hollow trees, as large ancient olive trees often are no less useful than other more intact trees. On the contrary, these trees have a fundamental role in the forest, offering refuge to small animals that nest in them, or as reservoirs for rainwater, thus becoming drinking troughs for the inhabitants of the wood. For alchemists, a hollow oak, was the source of the fountain of youth, as we see in the illustration of this card. This legendary fountain is mentioned in various medieval manuscripts, cited even by the famous alchemist Nicholas Flamel. We also encounter a hollow tree in medieval Tuscan tradition. The legend recounts how the blessed Vivaldo of San Gimignano made himself a small cell inside the trunk of a chestnut tree in the nearby Camperana forest, where he lived before he died on the 1st of May 1330. Keywords associated with the card: new perspectives, unexpected opportunities, protection, acquisition of a new home, stabilization of a bond, a lovely surprise, unexpected help, hidden feelings. How are we for time? Okay, going to the upright meaning. Let me just check this. Oh, Julia's just messaged me. Let's have a look. Oh, and Julia noticed that the rosellas, Eastern rosella, which looks like basically the Fruity Loops. It looks like a toucan, but it's a parrot, right? Does that make sense? It's got all the colours. Red, green, yellow, blue. It's an Australian parrot. The rosellas lived in our hollow tree. The hollow tree that was on our walk, which is pretty cool. Okay. The upright meaning of the hollow tree. When you play the card upright, drawing the hollow tree card represents the arrival of unexpected news, of positive surprises in the life of the seeker. The two mysterious openings in the trunk of the tree represent a break in routine for those who consult the cards. There is a small door that opens unexpectedly in the middle of a trail that the seeker thought they knew well, but the door leads them somewhere else. It is an opportunity that takes them completely by surprise at a moment when they are perhaps engaged with other issues or interests. It could mean the arrival of help that they could never have expected, or a professional opportunity outside the field of their experience. If the question is about relationships, the card is an excellent omen, reflecting feelings that are returned, or the stabilization of a current relationship. If the question is specific, the card can also represent the acquisition of a home. The hollow tree can also inform them that they will soon discover that someone has feelings for them, even if that person is trying not to let it show. More generally, the card indicates that this is a fortunate time, one during which the seeker can count on the protection of their lucky star. So all of that advice and information can be transferred into a hollow tree in real life. What these things in nature, plants and animals, what they symbolize in books, what their symbolism is explained by in books or in these cards, that's transferred to real life too. That corresponds to actual going out there and connecting with the tree, or talking to talking to the animals. That guidance can be received in the 3D world, just physical reality, going out there. And it is discoverable. That's the only way you can know it to be true. Not me just sitting here going blah, 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 what's this guy going on about? All right, we're going to look at the book by Peter Wohlleben called The Hidden Life of Trees, What They Feel, How They Communicate, Discoveries from a Secret World. This guy is a tree freak, and I read his children's books on the Secret Kindergarten podcast for kids. Some pretty cool stories there. Okay, so I'm going to read Chapter 11, Trees Aging Gracefully. This is going to take us to the bottom of the hour, at least. Before I talk about age, I would like to take a detour into the subject of skin. Trees and skin? First, let's approach the subject from the human point of view. Our skin is a barrier that protects our innermost parts from the outer world. It holds in fluids. It stops our insides from falling out, and all the while it releases and absorbs gas and moisture. In addition, it blocks pathogens that would just love to spread through our circulatory system. Aside from that, it is sensitive to contact, which is either pleasant and gives rise to the desire for more, or painful and elicits a defensive response. Annoyingly, this complicated structure doesn't stay the same forever, but gradually sags as we age. Folds and wrinkles appear so that our contemporaries can playfully guess how old we are, give or take a few years. The necessary progress of regeneration is not exactly pleasant either, when looked at close up. Each of us sheds about 0.05 ounces of skin cells a day, which adds up to about a pound a year. The numbers are impressive. 10 billion particles flake off us every day. That doesn't sound very attractive, but shedding dead skin is necessary to keep our outer organ in good condition. And in childhood, we need to shed skin so that we can grow. Without the ability to renew and expand the covering nature gives us, sooner or later we would burst. And how does this relate to trees? It is just the same with them. The biggest difference is simply the vocabulary we use. The skin of beeches, oaks, spruce, and company is called bark. It fulfills exactly the same function and protects trees' sensitive inner organs from an aggressive outer world. Without bark, a tree would dry right out, and right after the loss of fluid, fungi, which have no chance of survival in healthy, moist wood, would go to town and start breaking everything down. Insects also need lower moisture levels, and if the bark is intact, they are doomed. A tree contains almost as much liquid inside it as we do, and so it's unappealing to pests because they would quite simply suffocate. A break in its bark, then, is at least as uncomfortable for a tree as a wound in our skin is for us. And therefore the tree relies on mechanisms similar to the ones we use to stop this from happening. Every year, a tree in its prime adds between 0.5 to 1 inch to its girth. Surely this would make the bark split. It should. To make sure that doesn't happen, the giants constantly renew their skin while shedding enormous quantities of skin cells. In keeping with trees' size in comparison to ours, these flakes are correspondingly larger and measure up to 8 inches across. If you take a look around on the ground under trunks in windy, rainy weather, you will see the remains lying there. The red bark of pines is particularly easy to spot. But not every tree sheds in the same way. There are species that shed constantly. Fastidious people would recommend an anti-dandruff shampoo for such cases. Then there are others that flake with restraint. You can see who's doing what when you look at the exterior of a tree. What you see is the outer layer of bark, which is dead and forms an impervious exterior shell. This outer layer of bark also happens to be a good way of telling different species apart. This works for older trees anyway, for the distinguishing characteristics have to do with the shapes of the cracks, or you could say with the folds and wrinkles in a tree's skin. In young trees of all species, the outer bark is as smooth as a baby's bottom. As trees age, wrinkles gradually appear, beginning from below, and they steadily deepen as the years progress. Just how quickly this process plays out depends on the species. Pines, oaks, birches, and Douglas firs start early, whereas beeches and silver firs stay smooth for a long time. It all depends on the speed of shedding. For beeches whose silver-grey bark remains smooth until they are 200 years old, the rate of renewal is very high. Because of this, their skin remains thin and fits their age, that is to say, their girth, and therefore doesn't need to crack in order to expand. It's the same for silver firs, pines and the like. However, drag their feet when it comes to external makeovers. For some reason, they don't like to be parted from their baggage. Perhaps because of the additional security a thick skin provides. Whatever the reason, they shed so slowly that they build up really thick outer bark, and their exterior layers can be decades old. This means the outer layers originated at a time when the trees were still young and slim. And as the trees age and increase in girth, the outer layers crack way down into the youngest layer of bark that, like the bark of the beeches, fits the girth of the tree as it is now. So, the deeper the cracks, the more reluctant the tree is to shed its bark. And this behavior increases markedly with age. The same fate catches up with beeches when they pass middle age. This is when their bark starts to get wrinkles, starting from the bottom up. As though they want to broadcast this event, They set to work getting mosses to colonize these nooks and crannies, where moisture from recent rains lingers to soak the plush cushions. You can estimate the age of beech forests from quite a distance. The higher the green growth is up the trunk, the older the trees. Trees are individuals, and their predisposition to wrinkles varies. Some trees acquire their wrinkles at a younger age than their contemporaries. I have a few beech trees in the forest I manage that at the age of 100 are covered from top to bottom with rough outer bark. Usually it takes another 150 years for this to happen. There's no research to show whether this is purely because of genetics or whether a lifetime of excess also plays a role. At least a few factors are, once again, similar to the human condition. The pines in our garden are definitely deeply fissured. This cannot be because of age alone. At about 100, they have just outgrown their youth. Since 1934, the year our Forester's Lodge was built, they have been growing in a particularly sunny spot. Part of the property was cleared to build the lodge, and since then, the pines left standing have had more light, more sun, more ultraviolet radiation. The last causes changes in people's skin, and it appears the same thing happens with trees. Intriguingly, the outer bark on the sunny side of the trees is harder, and this means it is more inflexible and more inclined to crack. The changes I have mentioned, however, can also be because of skin diseases. In the same way, teenage acne often leaves lifelong scars, and attack by barkflies can leave a tree with a rough exterior. In this case, there are no wrinkles. Instead, there are thousands of tiny pits and pustules that never disappear no matter how long the tree lives. Sick trees can also develop festering, moist wounds. Bacteria move into these damp areas and stain them black. So it is not only in people that the skin is a mirror to the soul or state of well-being. Old trees can perform another very specific function in the forest ecosystem. In Central Europe, there are no longer any true old-growth forests. The largest extensive stand of trees is between 200 and 300 years old. Well, there you go. Until these forest preserves become old-growth forests once again, we must look to the west coast of Canada to understand the role played by ancient trees. There, Dr. Zoe Lindo of McGill University in Montreal researched Sitka spruce that were at least 500 years old. First of all, she discovered large quantities of moss on the branches and in the branch forks of trees of this advanced age. Blue-green algae had colonized the tree's mossy cushions. These algae capture nitrogen from the air and process it into a form the trees can use. Rain then washes this natural fertilizer down the trunk, making it available to the roots. Thus, old trees fertilize the forest and help their offspring get a better start in life. The youngsters don't have their own moss because moss grows very slowly and takes decades to get established. Apart from wrinkled skin and mossy growths, there are other physical changes that indicate a tree's age. Take, for example, the crown, which I can compare with something I have as well. Up top, my hair is thinning. It just doesn't grow like it did when I was young. And it's the same with the highest branches up in a tree's crown. After a specific time, 100 to 300 years depending on the species, the annual new growth gets shorter and shorter. In deciduous trees, the successive growth of such shoots leads to curved, claw-like branches that resemble fingers plagued by arthritis. In conifers, the ramrod straight trunks end in topmost shoots or leaders that are gradually reduced to nothing. whereas spruce in this situation stop growing altogether. Silver firs continue to grow, but instead of up, they look as though a large bird has built its nest in their upper branches. In Germany, where stork nests are a common sight, experts call this phenomenon stork nest crown. Pines redirect their growth even earlier, so that by the time they reach old age, the whole crown is wide with no identifiable leader. In any event, every tree gradually stops growing taller. Its roots and vascular system cannot pump water and nutrients any higher because this exertion would be too much for the tree. Instead, the tree just gets wider. Another parallel to many people of advancing years. The tree is also not capable of maintaining its mature height for long because its energy levels diminish slowly over the years. At first, it can no longer manage to feed its topmost twigs, and these die off. And so, just as an old person gradually loses body mass, an old tree does too. The next storm sweeps the dead twigs out of the crown, and after this cleanup, the tree looks a little fresher for a while. The process is repeated each year, reducing the crown so gradually we barely notice. Once all the topmost twigs and small branches are lost, only the thicker lower branches remain. Eventually they die too, though they are not so easily dislodged. Now the tree can no longer hide its advanced age or its infirmity. It's at this time, if not before, that the bark comes into play once again. Small, moist wounds have become portals for fungi to enter. The fungi advertise their triumphant advance through the tree by displaying magnificent fruiting bodies that jut out from the trunk in the shape of semicircular sources that grow larger with each passing year. Inside, the fungi break down all barriers and penetrate deep into the wood at the heart of the tree. There, depending on the species, they consume stored sugar compounds, or, even worse, cellulose and lignin, thereby decomposing the tree's skeleton and reducing it to powder, even though the tree has been bravely resisting this process for decades. On either side of the wounds, which continue to expand, the tree grows new wood, which it builds up into thick, stabilizing ridges. For a while, that helps to shore up the ruined structure against powerful winter storms. Then, one day, it's all over. The trunk snaps, and the tree's life is at an end. Finally, you can almost hear the young trees in waiting sigh. In the years to come, they will quickly push their way up, past the crumbling remains. But service in the forest doesn't end when life ends. The rotting cadaver continues to play an important role in the ecosystem for hundreds of years. Well, there you go. I know people said trees were kind of like people, but I didn't know that much. I didn't know they were that much like people. So the question is, can they listen? And can they respond? And do they have feelings for you? Well, I say yes. We can't answer that unless we try for ourselves. We've talked about birds, and now we're talking about trees. And if we think about birds as the angels and trees as the other helping people, like perhaps peers, well, it's just to put a picture of correspondences in your mind, at least for the moment. Oh, donation request time. This is Gino from the Secret Kindergarten and this show, Otherworld Connections, and thank you for tuning in to Revolution.radio, the #1 listener-supported radio station in the world. So please help support our efforts and airtime by visiting the station's donations section. on our website, revolution.radio. Okay, we can take this tree thing further by making an assumption that trees are as magic as we've been talking about at the beginning of the show, and doing a tree spell. A tree planting spell. Or you could just plant a tree. But let's go to page 126 of The Book of Tree Spells by Cheralyn Darcey, 2019 book. Okay, let's just read this. A tree planting spell. This spell is for any tree you plan on growing anywhere. It assists the tree to take root and thrive, but also to send out energies to protect others of its kind and trees in general. The offering that you will be gathering to put inside the jar must correspond with the characteristics of your tree. Research crystal correspondence to find suitable crystals, symbols, animals, other plants, and so on. So it's an exploration of symbolism and correspondences and meanings of a particular tree. What tree would you like to plant? Okay, so it's got a list of ingredients here. How are we for time? Oh, we're good for time, so I'll read them. So this book is suggesting to do this on the full moon, on a Monday and in the morning. Monday, the moon day. I recommend, looking into timings yourself for planting, because I don't know, and I'm just reading from this book. But I know that these things are important. Find and gather your tree, gardening tools and supplies as suggested for your tree. A lovely glass jar and a lid. Offerings for your tree. Milk, honey, and water. When planting a tree, the usual rule is, I'm just reading from the book here, is to dig a hole twice as deep and as wide as the pot your tree came out of. But check with the nursery for exact instructions. You will perhaps, or don't, because more on that later. You will perhaps also need extra suitable soil, fertilizer, mulch, and so on, and you will need to make sure the position you select is suitable for the tree. Plant your tree, and as you do, speak to it. Encourage it to grow strong and tell it why you selected it, what you hope for it, and give it promises of your commitment to its care. Fill the jar with your offerings. Dig a hole nearby. Tell the tree why you selected these gifts, listing each, and then bury it near the tree and say, "If ever I am not here, these gifts will keep you company. I hope they remind you that you are loved and respected in this place." Pour a little milk and honey on the ground around the tree and say, "May you never go thirsty or hungry, and may the good spirits of this place welcome you." Water the tree well. And let's have a little look. There's some little factoids here. Knocking on a wooden piece of furniture or object to counter any bad luck that might befall you once you mention something with negative possibilities comes from the ancient belief that pagan gods lived inside trees. If you knocked on the tree, you could awaken the gods and then ask for their assistance. And that's what we were talking about at the beginning of the show. Trees want to help you. If we look at Otherworld connections, and what we focus on is goal setting and interacting or getting help from that which we can't see to live a life of service to others, that's where that kind of thing links into this, right? Trees want to help you. We are kind of supposed to want to help the world, help others, and help nature. All right, and here's another little factoid here. You should avoid planting very large or tall trees to the east or the northeast of your home, as according to many traditions and to feng shui advice, they will emit negative energies in such positions. Well, my opinion on that is, I do a lot of feng shui stuff. You could just ask the tree where it would like to go, or put it where you feel like it wants to go. Planting the tree is the important part. And where are we for time? Oh, we got heaps of time. What did I do there? Oh no! I have to talk on a show that I'm talking in. Well, what's important with the spells, the spell there is, I say, just the planting aspect and the intention. Okay? The intention and the actions. And feeling good that you're doing that. I don't think you really... I would say, if you're into the ceremonial aspect of that, then yeah, get involved. I think the main thing is planting a tree with the curiosity to learn about the stuff we're talking about today and building a relationship with the tree, helping the tree and letting the tree help you. There's something else I wanted to say about trees. But what I'm going to do now, we're into the practical realm. So it's said here to ask the people at the garden center. Sure, you can do that. I'm just going to go to my emails because I want to see. Okay, excuse me, I had to do that. All right. So as I was reading that, and I was reading the advice on what to do with the tree, I was getting voices in my head. Have you ever talked about gardening with people? I'm absolutely not an expert on gardening. But do you do gardening? Do you have struggles in the garden? Sometimes, less success than you would like. It sounds like an infomercial, right? It kind of is, but it's not really. And then you talk to people about it, and everybody's got an opinion. And then you go online, and everybody tells you to do this, tells you to do that, tells you to do the other thing. Even this book on spells is telling you what to do in the garden. I think gardening is one of the biggest rabbit holes out there. What do you think? Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So the point of my story is, we were very lucky to discover tendingmygarden.com. It's a website created by Teresa Martz, who also wrote a book, Tending My Garden. And I'm just going to go to the website here. All I can say is, right now, is if you have questions about gardening and you're interested in gardening, you're not going to know that this is legit and this is the real deal unless you check it out and try some of the advice for yourself. But what I can say is her book, Organic Gardening, Cutting Through the Hype to the 3 Keys to Successful Gardening. You can order it through the website. First off, she's really good. She's got a lot of advice on her website. So there's not really, she's not secretive about her knowledge. She's helpful and she wants to share, and that energy shines through on her website. And the point of that is, it was already a breath of fresh air in the gardening world to discover, this kind of energy around this kind of talk. might be a New Zealander thing. For it to be very gatekeepy, this organic gardening, biodynamic, all that stuff, right? So it was really nice to discover this website. And the reason I'm saying this is just genuinely, if you do gardening and you have questions and you sort of have a bit of struggle here and there, if you're happy, then you're happy. Just enjoy. If you do struggle and you find things difficult, well, yeah, Teresa Martz's work, tendingmygarden.com, her book, Organic Gardening, Cutting Through the Hype to the 3 Keys to Successful Gardening. And, you're welcome. Honestly, the information that is really surprising, and like all the best things in life and all the best knowledge and the most important knowledge, there's a spiritual aspect, as in you have to have faith and try things out to discover them for yourself. You can be led to the water, but you're the one that has to drink it, right? So yeah, so we're going to talk about Teresa Martz. So I just looked on her website for something to do with trees, and I'm going to read this. 3 simple concepts to enhance your flower gardens and borders. Something practical. That's all. How are we for time? Just checking the time. All right. So this is a blog entry written by Teresa Martz. When I started vegetable gardening 32 years ago, this was written in September the 20th, 2010, it was primarily to supply food that I would not have been able to acquire otherwise. We still depend heavily on the vegetables I raise. I started flower gardening, I guess because it's just in me. I feel sure the love of it was passed to me by my grandmother, who gardened until she was almost 100 years old. I remember when I was a child visiting her in Wisconsin. She had a large border of colourful flowers. There was a large tree in the border with a swing that had been made for me. Some 60 years later, the colourfulness of her border remains in my memory still. After Granddaddy died, she lived with my uncle, who was one of the last homesteaders in Idaho. Little by little, my grandmother carved out a garden on the property. She had a good-sized flower garden, maybe 40 feet by 40 feet, that she laid out, and yes, she worked it herself, although she took every opportunity to enlist the aid of whatever strong and willing young man or woman came along for whatever task it was that she could not readily accomplish alone. All 3 concepts were instinctively practiced by my grandmother. Looking back, it is amazing to me that my grandmother, with no way to visit gardens of significance or to acquire garden books to learn and see what was being done, still instinctively put into play 3 of the same concepts that famed author and garden designer Penelope Hobhouse used to constantly improve the National Trust gardens at Tinton Hull. Of course, the manner in which grandmother practiced these concepts reflected her way of life and lack of financial means. Nonetheless, they were the same concepts. Although she could not afford to buy green bushes and trees, for concept 1, she used many trellises and arbors, constructing of whatever material she was able to find or gather. They gave form to her garden and carried the garden even when the flowers were not blooming. Her garden statues, many of them gifts, also added a year-round interest that shrubs and trees would add to a more formal plan. There was a surprise at every turn and new delights tucked in places you didn't see until you were almost right on top of them. Concept 2. Most flowers were gifts or inexpensive sale items that she was able to purchase in later years. In spite of that, she seemed to have it all. Flowers would climb and drift as though nature had planted them. Concept number 3. Of what benefit to you is Penelope Hobhouse's knowledge and accomplishments? Not all have the time or the means to design large acres or even small plots of garden and plant them in their entirety for the first year. Fortunately, famed garden designers like Penelope Hobhouse do. How is that of benefit to you? By knowing what she has done, you save yourself lots of time and make more educated choices, and you can do it as your time and means permit. Already world-renowned gardens, but always striving to improve. The National Trust Gardens at Tintinhull in England are said to represent the English natural style with a grace seldom achieved. In a video filmed while Penelope Hobhouse was curator there, she told of making notes each year, adding new things and removing other things, in an effort to continually improve the already world-renowned gardens. As she talked with Audrey Hepburn, she mentioned, among other things, 3 simple concepts used in planning these borders. Concept number 1. Use green for structure and interest. Green being trees, shrubs, evergreens, and even grasses. Although the goal is always to keep colourful bloom going all the time, said Miss Hobhouse, no one succeeds 100% of the time. Bits of the border come to a peak at different times, and green can hold the garden together without flowers. This is a good principle no matter what the size of your borders or gardens. Trees, shrubs, evergreens hold the garden together in times of drought and in the winter. Is your garden interesting in the winter? Much to my dismay, 90% of my borders are not interesting in late winter. If yours is the same, start planning now. You don't have to correct the problem all at one time, but do something towards it every year, as much as you can. 3 years ago, I started adding flowering shrubs, evergreens, conifers, and ornamental trees. There's a picture below of a 3-year-old Japanese maple. When you choose, look for bark, shape, and colour to enjoy in the winter. Summer foliage in different shades and hues. Shrubs and trees that flower, and some spectacular ones that don't. Add a few conifers. There are many wonderful miniature and small conifers available. As these plantings age, your enjoyment of your garden will be multiplied many times over. There's some pictures of dwarf shrub. Has added a lot to Teresa's front borders. Teresa added flowering shrubs as a natural fence and to give the borders structure, form and interest as well. And that picture, well, looks glorious. Okay, concept number 2. Create surprises in your garden. You can arrange all your new plantings in a manner that will allow perennials and annuals to be placed amongst them. This will allow you to create surprises in your garden. In other words, your garden should not all be revealed at a single glance. An example in my border is a rather tall grass that is placed to conceal the surprise around the other side. I just love it. That particular spot is striking, and it always delights my guests and me to come upon it when we are walking about the gardens. I'm planning to use my plantings of trees, shrubs and evergreens the same way I have used this grass, to conceal certain floral delights until the viewer is almost on top of them. Concept number 3. Keep it natural looking. It takes planning to keep a border looking as if nature planted it. An ideal that will go a long way towards achieving the goal is to include insubstantial flowers with petals that are not solid and that weave into each other. Lavenders, yarrows, and Queen Anne's lace are good examples. I've used lavenders in spite of their height at the front of the borders to give a lacy, natural look. They mirror each other but a little off-center across the walkway, which is just visible in the picture. Another idea is to allow a plant that has colonized in your garden to spill over and do its thing. Keep it in check enough to control it, but at the same time allow it to enhance the natural look you want. As you garden through the fall, take a good look at your gardens and borders and think about how you can improve them. I'll be doing the same. Using these 3 simple concepts will go a long way towards giving you a more enjoyable garden experience. Trees on the border. Reading that made me think of your garden as a community of friends. You never be lonely with a garden, I'll say. Okay, I have 3.5 minutes left, so I'm going to About Teresa on the About page. Welcome to Tending My Garden. My name is Teresa. I've been organic gardening ever since I started gardening 40 years ago. I think that's about 43 years now. My husband and I live in a little country town in Virginia, which is becoming more not so country every day. In any event, I love it. We have a little over an acre on which our home, small garage and shed sit. Flower borders and gardens take up most of the rest. I want to be of help and encouragement to you by sharing my 35 years of gardening experience with you. That will spill over into the kitchen. 55 years of experience, and I'll give you some helpful tips to make your life in the garden and kitchen much more enjoyable and help you eat better at the same time. A lot of what you read here will not be the mainstream way of doing things. I have simplified and simplified again my garden and kitchen chores so that I can have the time to grow our food and prepare good, wholesome food for my husband and myself and our guests when we have them, and tend to my other responsibilities of making a living as well. And I just want to step in and say that's what I've noticed with this, with Teresa's gardening advice and style, that it actually makes things more practical. You're actually cooking and that sort of thing. Okay, let's just keep reading while that's loading. I've been gardening for 40 years, many of those years spent without a nickel to spend. I've learned over the years what is needed and what is hype. My knowledge comes from first-hand experience and observation as opposed to just theoretical knowledge of a topic that comes from reading only. All right. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one.